Hey guys, Dezz Asante here from the Techmuze Academy. Welcome back to Techmuze. Today on the show, you are going to learn everything you need to know about how to get gigs, how to get better gigs, and most importantly, through the importance of relationship building, how to keep those gigs once you got them. As always, if you like the content, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and tickle that bell so that you get notified every time we have something new to share with you. Without further ado, let's get into this week's conversation. Today on the show, we have an author, musician. His name is Jake Laughlin. Jake, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Happy to be here.
All right. So I understand, we're going to talk about this more later, but I understand you've got a book out, fresh off the presses. It's called Get the Gig, is it?
Yes, sir. Get the Gig, a musician's guide for booking more live shows.
Excellent, excellent. Now, later in the conversation, we'll direct people where they can go if they want to check that out. But we connected recently over the internet, which is how a lot of these conversations take place. I'm a big fan of the internet and technology in general, and for reasons just like this. You can reach out, network, and then jump on a call and just chat face to face with somebody in another part of the world. I think it's fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us here at the Techmuze Academy. This, by the way, just so you know, is going to be a part of the YouTube channel. It's also going to be in the podcast as well, in iTunes and Stitcher. So for those of you watching or listening, if you're listening in your favorite podcatcher and you want to catch the video, head on over to YouTube and look for Techmuze Academy there, and vice versa. If you're on YouTube and you like to take these things in your pocket with you, and on the commute or while you're mowing the lawn or whatnot, then subscribe for sure in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. So Jake, tell us a little bit about yourself for those who might not be familiar with you. What's your background? I'm assuming you're a musician because you wrote a book on getting gigs, and I think you have some association with a radio station in your local area there. Give us a little rundown, the 25 Cent Tour. Who are you? What do you do?
Thank you. Well, before I say that, let me just say thank you for having me. Honored to be here, and appreciate you opening me up to your audience. So my background, I'm actually a little bit more muggle than musician. I play a little bit here and there, but I sort of fell backwards into talent buying when I was in college. Not even quite sure how I got into it. It just kind of happened, and fell in love with it and really enjoyed getting to work with different venues and promoting shows and putting shows together, and just really fell in love with it. And the more I got involved with it, the more I started hearing from people in my town saying, man, radio stations don't really play all our stuff that much. It's hard for us to get out there. It's just a tough business to do. And I thought, well, man, it's certainly not for lack of talent. I live in Denton, Texas, a great music city and awesome music scene here. And I thought, man, it's certainly not for lack of talent. It's got to be, ways for people to know about it or hear about it or pushing it or getting it out there. And I thought, well, man, if nobody else is playing these guys, then I will. And so I started an online radio station for local artists here in Denton, trying to promote shows and push all of that. And then as time went along, we started to become friends with the Denton Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is a tourism organization trying to draw tourism into Denton. And they'd been wanting to start an online radio station. I had an online radio station. We started working on a few projects together. And then eventually they acquired Denton Radio, and it became part of the Denton Convention and Visitors Bureau. So I work with them now. I came with Denton Radio, dentonradio.com if you want to see the station. And so I'm now part of the Denton Convention and Visitors Bureau. So by day, I'm running the radio, and then by night, I'm also still booking shows and talent buying and things like that. So I've gotten the chance to really look at a lot of different sides of the music industry and say, okay, I'm promoting shows and I'm booking shows, and kind of what all that looks like, and that's kind of me and how I came to be right here.
Very cool. So if I understand you correctly, your the expertise that you've acquired over the years that resulted in this book that you've recently released has come from the talent buying side of things, as opposed to the pavement pounding musician trying their best to eke out a living, which is very interesting to me because I am one of those pavement pounding musicians.
Right.
And so it's nice to get the opposite perspective from the same type, the same business interaction or transaction that takes place, to see it from the other person's side. So can you tell us a little bit about what someone might expect when they get into this book, and maybe some tips that you can offer to us, lowly artists who are just really trying to eke out a living here, that might be helpful for us to gain a little bit more success this year?
Sure. Well, and for starters, nothing lowly in being an artist. I truly, truly respect so much what musicians do, and it's such a hard business, but it's such a necessary business. I mean, music has such an amazing power to do so many different things for so many different people, whether it make you laugh or cry or just have a great moment or whatever it may be. So any musician out there wanting to push their stuff, man, please keep chugging on, because we need you. What you do is really important. But for me, I knew a lot of musicians who, exactly like you said, musician would meet musician, and they would talk amongst themselves about, okay, here's what I think a venue's looking for. And I thought, well, man, can I add to this conversation and say, all that's wonderful, but can I add to the conversation and say, here's what talent buyers are looking for on the talent buyer side, and say, okay, here's what I'm looking for in a musician, and what I'm looking to see when people reach out to me. Get the Gig it's a short book. It's not a big, long, lengthy read or anything like that. But I wanted to introduce some concepts that could kind of start tickling the brain of an artist to say, okay, the show, the marketing, the product, it doesn't all end on stage. There's some things we can do off stage to help spread the message. So one of the biggest concepts of the book is trust. Is trying to develop trust with a venue. A lot of the time when you've got a venue that's booking music, you're dealing with maybe a mom and pop or a sole proprietor or somebody like that. And one bad night can really hurt them for that month, which can hurt rent and employee, those kinds of things, right? Yeah. And so where they want to do great things for the local music and they want to get involved in it, usually they love music themselves. That's why they book and go through all of it and give their time to it. But at the same time, they've got to know that this artist, even if they're not going to draw a huge crowd, are they going to keep from my regulars from coming? Are they going to be able to continue to entertain the ones that are there? Are they going to treat my staff well? Are they going to show up on time? Are they going to work well with my sound guy? All those kinds of things. And so one of the biggest things that I tell musicians is try and find ways to develop relationships and meet the people, the decision makers in the businesses, or even just somebody that works for or works with the decision maker, and start to build that level of trust with them. A lot of what you see a lot of the time is people that are in a bar, drinking in a bar, are usually the people that play that bar. People going and eating at a restaurant, or there's probably a lot of players that are eating there too. They've built relationships. They've connected with people over a certain amount of time, and they've built that level of trust first. And then all of a sudden the gigs started coming. And that's just a natural thing with anybody, is they want more music. They want more creativity. They want more of these things happening. But they need to develop that trust with people first. And so trust can often be a much bigger factor than talent. And so there's ways that we can try and develop that trust and invest in that. In the book, I even tell people, if you could take one night a week and just go hang out in the venues that you want to play in, it would shock you what a difference it would make, because you start to develop a name for yourself there and start to know you. There's all sorts of other practices. You could join your local chamber. You could join your Main Street Association. You could get involved with the Arts Council. Whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of organizations built for networking and for trust building in your city that musicians don't often get involved with. And it really sets you out in front of the crowd, especially like with the Chamber of Commerce. You've got all these businesses looking to do more creative and interesting and exciting things, and they're looking for people to know. And then all of a sudden, if a musician shows up to a chamber event and they get to develop that relationship with you, it would blow your mind on what an impact that can make when you start developing that trust between yourself and the businesses.
Right. Yeah. Interesting point. There's a number of interesting points you bring up there, but the thing that really caught my ear was what you've just finished with, like Chamber of Commerce and these kinds of organizations, that thought never occurred to me. I mean, one thing that we speak about here a lot. I offer, just so you know, I offer a few courses out of the academy. One of them is called the Artist Promotion Blueprint, where I'm trying to educate DIY musicians on how to use the internet and some of these tools and technologies to help further their career. And one of the big things that I talk about over and over and over again is the importance of relationship building. Because no matter what business you're in, it's a human doing business with another human, and there has to be some kind of personal relationship to help the business relationship actually progress. And so I appreciate you speaking that way, because I've experienced that myself. I'll go to when I started playing out, I would go to open mics, for example. And that's an opportunity for me to introduce my music and myself to whoever's managing the venue and the staff and what have you, and build those relationships. And I've gotten many a call from doing those types of things. But yeah, the Chamber of Commerce, because one of the nuts I've been trying to crack a little bit lately, just with my own work, is how to get into some of those better paying corporate style gigs. Where people have a $2,000 budget that they have to spend, or else they don't get that same budget next year.
Exactly, right. Right. Those are good friends to have.
Absolutely, yeah. And so that's a really good a gold nugget there that I'm definitely going to take with me, and hopefully people listening and watching will take that as well upon themselves to go out and start making these relationships in a different venue, a different context, as opposed to just going to the bars all the time and hopefully not getting too drunk before you get a chance to introduce yourself to the manager, right?
Exactly. Well, and I mean, I say this in the book, it's really interesting. You don't even have to necessarily expand your social circle so that you can get more gigs or get benefits from it. It just sort of is a natural result. As you expand your social circle and try and intentionally make friends with people outside of your own group, all of a sudden these connections and these benefits start coming. I've got a good buddy who he's a musician as well, and he loves to find different areas to volunteer, whether he's working on houses or doing different charitable work or whatever. And he just does it to do it because he's just a nice guy. He wants to give back. And what he's found is that the other people that are also trying to give back are people that have benefited greatly from their community. So they want to give back to their community. And those people who've benefited greatly from their community are usually business owners and organizations that have venues or connections or things that you can benefit from. And so it's a really cool sort of cosmic karma that as you start to build more and more and more relationships, just the natural byproduct of that is that you start to get more and more benefits for your career.
Absolutely.
It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, and it reminds me of something that a lot of my mentors in the area of business tend to mention fairly frequently. The people that I follow anyway, which is, business is a practice in serving. And if you approach people when you're networking, for example, if you approach people with the mindset of what can I do for you as opposed to what can you do for me, then all of a sudden these things you're describing begin to really take place. You start to first of all add really quality relationships to your network, which then spiders out into friends of friends of friends and referrals and all kinds of great stuff that take place when you approach things with an attitude of service. I try my best to do that with the Techmuze Academy as well. I try to keep in mind that is why I'm here. That is why I started this project to begin with. And then the people that decide to compensate me with their hard-earned dollars is a byproduct. It's a thing that happens because I am trying my best to be of service to my community through, the things that I've learned and the guests like yourself that come on and talk about things I don't know quite as much about and so on and so forth. But yeah, you bring up some really, really good points. Question for you though, in terms of, okay, so we've established the importance of relationship building. So let's say you've got a few relationships, or maybe even you're approaching someone a little colder, right? Right, that you don't necessarily have a solid relationship with yet. When it comes to like the actual business negotiation, do you have any tips or techniques or things that you've seen in your own experience that would impact the way one might negotiate compensation? Because there's a lot of different models, right? Some places you don't get paid, it's an exposure gig. Some places split the door with you, or bar sales. Sometimes there's a guarantee. That's my favorite, of course, right? Any thoughts or tips or tricks for that negotiation process?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I like to tell artists is evaluate where you are in your career and where you're wanting to go, what you're wanting to get out of this relationship. So I know a lot of people that will come out of the gate real strong and they're looking to make a lot of money right away and all this kind of, and it's a constant debate, right, on how much money you should ask versus how much you shouldn't, all this kind of stuff. And so what I'll tell people is, okay, I know you want $500 a gig, but you may not necessarily be there yet. You'll get there, but you may not be there yet. You might be at $50 a gig right now, and that's okay. And so usually what I tell people to do is always lead with the money. Even when you first encounter, if you're first going for that ask, it's okay to say, I want to make X. But the other side of that equation, well, before I go ahead, I'll stay here for a second, is it changes the tone and the conversation when you come in and say, hey, I'll play and I'll do it for free. Even if you will do it for free, and sometimes we all do stuff for free. We're doing this for free right now, but I get benefit out of it. We all get benefit out of it.
Yeah.
Free stuff is still good. We all play for free for a while, but don't necessarily lead with it.
Right.
Come in saying, I want to make this. I want to make X. Here's what I want to make. Don't go too high. You don't have to go too low, but you just say, here's what I would like to make. And then they get to gauge. Are they in the budget? Are they not in the budget? All this kind of stuff. Now to go forward, what I also tell them to do, especially when you're first starting. Now, if you've been in this game for a long time, you don't need to do this. But when you're first starting, go for an ask. I want to make X. But then it's very okay to say, but I'm negotiable.
Right.
And a lot of people may debate that with me or argue it, and that's okay. I even say in the book, Get the Gig is not supposed to be an instruction manual where you have to do everything I say. It's just meant to tickle the brain a little bit, to say, okay, here's some concepts of some things to do off stage. And even if you don't do anything that the book says, if you start thinking, what if maybe I can strategize this way, then that's the goal.
Right.
But what I tell people is ask for what you want and then say, but I can negotiate if I need to. And what that does, to me, just speaking as a talent buyer, what that does is they tell me, okay, they're a serious musician because they're asking for something, but they're not going to come in and be a diva or try and push their weight around or these kinds of things. They're willing to work with me. Right. And usually when a musician says, I want to make this, but I'm negotiable, I will go out of my way to get them what they deserve, right? Because they're willing to work with me. Now, I've had a lot of musicians who I've had to work with for years and years and years and years, where I would put them on a patio and they're playing for beers and cheers, and there wasn't any money. The venue didn't have any, and we worked together for years that way. And then all of a sudden, I pick up a great venue that had some real money behind it, and they're the first call I made. Sure. Again, going back to relationships, because they're willing to work with me, and I know that they're going to be a good person to go into this deal with. So as far as negotiation, I think I think you should talk about it up front. I've known a lot of musicians who've left gigs at the end of the night because they were too embarrassed to go ask for the money. Right. And then they didn't get it. And, or they're coming in really strong fisted and I'm going to get this and get what I'm worth and all this and all that's fine. It's all preference. But what I like to see happen is, here's what I would like to make, be very upfront about it, and then say I'm negotiable if we need to be. And then it's okay because you've talked about it already and you've talked about it way in advance, so that at the end of the night, you don't have to feel awkward about coming and, and getting your cash or any of those kinds of things. If you said 300, then that's the deal. If you said 500, then that's, and so as far as negotiation, that's the best thing I could say is you're in a partnership with this organization. It's not you versus them. It's what can we do together to best provide a great experience for the audience. And when you start to work as a partner with that venue, that just makes a huge, huge difference. And you may make less on the first gig, but you may make a lot more on the second gig. Right. And it's much more important to get those repeat gigs. And so that's usually what I tell everybody is always think like a partner rather than me versus them. Come in with an amount of money that you want to make, and that's perfectly fine. That's a good thing. And then be willing to be negotiable. If they just don't have it, then they just don't have it, and that's okay. And they may have it, and they may want to put you on stage once, and then you say, okay, I'm willing to do it for $100 this time, but next time I want 5.
Right.
And if they go, okay, cool, but we got to see how it goes first. All right, cool. Then give me my 100. And then the next time when you blow them away, then they go, okay, let's do it for 100 again. No. I'm at 5 now. We already talked about that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's interesting. Having that money conversation is oftentimes difficult for people, especially in the beginning. I wrestled with it myself, and occasionally still do, depending on what kind of thing I'm talking about, because I do a number of different things to generate revenue. But I found, and I've learned the hard way over and over again, that it's important, like in the beginning, that should be on the table, so everyone's expectations are set, because there's nothing worse than, doing work and getting to the end of a job or a gig or whatnot, and then being like, so, how much are you going to give me now?
Yeah.
It's I'll chalk that up to a rookie mistake. I've made it myself.
I've made it myself too.
Yeah. Hang on one sec. My phone keeps ringing, and I got to put it on airplane mode here.
I understand.
There we go. That'll solve that problem. Yeah, and of course, the point you make about a partnership, I think, is important for people to realize, and not just us musicians, but I think venue owners too. I mean, I've dealt with venue owners, bar owners, and restaurant owners that really don't view it that way, and it's like they expect me to fill their bar full of patrons and entertain them, and yet they're not doing anything to promote the fact that I'm going to be there to help get their own bar full of patrons. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens out there in the world, and I suppose it's just the hazards of the job.
100%. Well, and that's a really good point, because I would never want somebody to read my book or hear what I'm saying and go, well, man, he's just on the side of the venue. He's not on the side of the musician. No. I'm definitely on the side of the musician.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of venues out there that, man, just maybe they're just not doing it right.
Yeah.
It's the music that I'm trying to help. I want more music out there, and if we're going to get more music out there, we got to get it in more venues. And there's a lot of great venues out there that are doing a really good job, or could do a really good job, even if the musician needs to work with them maybe to help them figure out how to get it going. But I'm with you. It's a tough gig, whether you're a venue or whether you're a musician, and having people that are willing to work together and maybe bend or move a little bit and just have a ton of communication so that everybody knows what's up ahead of time.
Yeah.
Makes for a much smoother deal.
And to harken back to what we started off this conversation with, I mean, that is an important part of any kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Your spouse, your siblings, your parents, like having that open and honest communication and a little bit of flexibility is, I think, an important part of, pretty much any relationship you find yourself in.
It was exactly as you said, man. Business is just life. It's interaction with people. You get good at business, you're going to get good at life. And if you're good at life, you're going to be good at business. That's just what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, because ultimately speaking, it's just a series of interactions. I mean, we're interacting right now. This conversation is going to be interacted with by many people out on the internet, and hopefully they find some benefit with it and pull a couple gold nuggets out of it. But and then of course when you are exchanging value, then oftentimes there's a monetary component, like what we're talking about with getting a decent gig, if you're exchanging value. Which leads me to another question, maybe you have some insight on, and that is, from my perspective as a working musician, there's often this conversation that comes up that is where a lot of the younger, newer musicians will come in and undercut price-wise, right? So you get a venue that, every business has only whatever budget they have to work with, right? And then, if I've been playing X venue, Y venue, and Z venue for $500 a night, and then all of a sudden somebody comes in and says, "Oh, I'll take that night for $150." Like how do you think someone in my position might want to go about dealing with that, or do you have any thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, I mean. So I'm in the process right now of working on my second book called "Got the Gig, Now What?"
Okay.
And it's more about the money side of, okay, get the gig, you got this gig, now got the gig, how are we gonna turn it into money? And there's a million different ways to try and make money with music, but I think the most valuable, the one that gives the musician the most leverage. And not everybody will necessarily agree with me, but I think the one that gives a musician the most leverage is draw. How much draw can you add to the equation? Because really, it's all a numbers game, right? So if I can bring out 500 people, the venue normally sees 300. They had a 200-person boost, which means they made X, Y, and Z extra that night. So I deserve, my share of it. If they normally have 50 and I brought out 51, and there's not a whole lot of extra profit there, right? Not to say that they shouldn't pay you for the experience that you created, but you didn't generate additional revenue, right? So I've had a lot of buddies who have big draw, and they'll go to the venue, and the venue goes, well, I mean, I got somebody that's willing to play for 500. I'm not so sure I should be giving you your 2,000. Hey, that's fine. If you want to use your 500 person, cool. But if you want the extra 200 people that I'm going to bring that night, then that's what you'll give me. Now, that's not the case for everybody. A cover artist, they're more, they may have draws, but a lot of the times cover artists are playing what the venue's asking them to play. They're there to set a mood, those kinds of things. You've got other forms of art and where draw is not the most important thing. Right. What I spend most of my time working with is DIY musicians who want to get their music out there and their voice their way. And so the way that I tell them to break through everything and to be the one to really stand out from the crowd is the draw. Yeah. Now there's other things you can do. You can be the one that really just treats the staff so stellar that when they're having a staff meeting and they go, who should we have back? The bartender and the waitress and whoever is going, we gotta have that one. One of the things I recommend to get the gig, there's a venue I work with where they assign a waiter to the band, and so they're bringing them drinks and food and all that stuff all night, and it's a good paying gig. They also have a big tip jar out, and this it's a pretty higher end venue, and so they tip really well. And so at the end of the night, I'm saying take a little bit of that tip money and say thank you to that waiter and that bartender who've been taking care of you all night. Sure. Because you're also getting a check, and now sometimes you're not able to do that, but if you can, give them a little extra thank you, and that'll set you apart from those other musicians to where when the divas come in, the staff goes to their management and says, I don't even want to work tonight because I can't stand working with these people. Yeah. Whereas the ones who really treat them well, they'll be going back to their managers going, whoa, man, we got to have them back. And I mean, it's simple stuff, but not stuff that everybody does. There's a guy here in town. He started Denton Radio with me. He goes by Bone Doggy. And Bone Doggy's been around forever. He's a legend here. And I think the greatest secret in Bone Doggy's arsenal is at the end of the night, he'll find everybody he worked with, shake their hand, look them right in the eye, and give them a really genuine thank you so much. And you just feel it. Like we'll sit around having beers with friends and we'll go, man, has Bone Doggy ever given you that chilling thank you? He shakes and you just feel it. This guy genuinely appreciates everything you did for him. And it makes people want to work with him. Sure. And there's power in winning over the staff, in talking about the staff member who just had a birthday or this or that, and I'm rambling, but there's trying to make an impression with the staff there. Sure. Can really, really go a long, long, long way, because draw is not always an equation for everybody. Right. If you can get the major draw that really sets you apart, then when the venue goes, well, I don't know about the venue, you go, hey, you either want my crowd or you don't want my crowd. Yeah. And that gives you a really good negotiation place. Or you can say, hey, or the staff goes and works on your behalf. And while all the other musicians are more focused inward, you're focused outward, and they're going, we've got to have them back. Mm-hmm. They give a shout out to my kid every time they walk in. They do this, they do that, all this stuff. It boosts everybody's morale. Everybody's happy about it. That can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've experienced that myself. And it's interesting the way the tangent that this conversation has taken, because it's like a lot of times people just think, I just got to practice my guitar solos more so that I'm better, so that I can ask for more money. Well, you could play the greatest guitar solo ever, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are fulfilling the job requirements that venue owner is hoping that you will fulfill.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, keep working on your guitar solos, but for sure, hone your craft. Of course. But,
well, and that's such an interesting thing, right? I mean, when you say to a musician, "Go work on your music" or "Go work on your career" or whatever, most of them think practice.
Yeah.
Right? They don't think, "I'm going to go network. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go work on social media. I'm going to go do these other things." That's why services like yours are so invaluable, because it really opens people's eyes up to, man, there's so much more I can be doing when I'm working on me. Yeah. And all those things are so valuable and such a special part of what we get to do.
Absolutely, 100%. That gets an amen from me. So I tell you what, I don't want to keep you too long. I'll be respectful of your time, but we talked a little bit about how to go about building relationships so that you can get these better gigs, these nicer gigs, and start to get out of the the dives, the little corner dives that pay you $50 and a beer. That's cool to start there. You got to start somewhere. Everybody does. But now that so let's assume then we've gotten a couple of gigs under our belt, we've developed some relationships. How do we keep those gigs coming? Because I'm a big fan of anything recurring. Yeah. So I mean, even in my business with the Techmuze Academy, it's a monthly subscription, so it's a recurring thing. I have to try to convince you one time, and once you're happy with what you've seen, it just keeps giving fruit until you've decided you've had your fill, right? And so like that's one of the biggest things that's helped me with my revenue from playing is getting those recurring gigs, getting that weekly thing or that monthly or bi-weekly thing. Do you have any advice for how to get into that kind of conversation with a venue owner?
Yeah. Well, and I apologize because I feel like I'm sounding like a broken record, but I think it does again go back to relationships. Yeah. It's very hard to find something more solid than just developing those relationships. There's more in the Get the Gig book than just relationship building.
Sure.
But really, I mean, when you want to create something that's reoccurring, it's a matter of setting that impression and really setting yourself apart from everybody else, so that when the staff and the venue owner and everybody says, "Okay, who are we going to have this month?" everybody goes, "We got to have that one," And that can be tough. I mean, that can be minimizing some of the negative qualities. That can be working well with the sound guy. That can be, making special accommodations for them when other musicians wouldn't. It's same thing with anything and in any business. Everybody wants to work with people that they like.
Sure.
And so you don't have to change who you are or your personality or anything like that. But it's exactly like we were saying before. When we make a genuine effort to build relationships with the people around us, the cosmic karma, as it always, comes back to us. Not right away, but over time it begins to develop and it begins to happen to where when people go, "Okay, we got to figure out who we're going to book this month. We've got 10 choices. These 9, all 10 of them are good," because that's an unfortunate factor is that talent's everywhere. Yeah. I mean, talent is kind of all over the place, which is good, but at the same time, it's tougher to stand out.
Sure.
But when you go, okay, all 10 of them are talented, but that one is so nice and works so well with us, and they show up early and they tip the staff and they thank everybody and they work well with the sound guy and they bring extra cables so that there's not a scramble at the end of it all, and they're sending their stage plot ahead of time so that everybody can be prepped and prepared, and and they promote on their end and all that kind of stuff as well, along, because the venue should be promoting too, but they're also promoting too, and and they just go, "Man, this one gives so much effort." That can often undo somebody over here that doesn't give as much effort, but maybe they're a lot better, maybe they draw a bigger crowd, maybe this, maybe that. 9 times out of 10, venues want to work with this one much more than they want to work with this one. Eventually, they get real tired of this one, and they want to start going back with somebody that is a joy to work with.
Sure.
And again, that's in anything, whether you're making pizzas or cars or music.
Yeah.
That's always the case.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen this in my own experience as well. It's a lot of times people forget that you're dealing with 2 groups of people. You're dealing with the staff, who are there all day long, working, sweating, cooking the food, serving the food and the drink. And then you're also dealing with the patrons. Right.
Yes.
And so, it's important to engage with the patrons and make sure they're having a great time so that they order one more pitcher of beer and stick around a little longer. Right. But a lot of times people forget that, you're not just there to entertain the patrons. You're also doing business with the staff. You're working together. They're working, you're working.
Well, and I'll give you another example. So where we do Denton Radio, we're in an on the glass studio in our visitor information center called Discover Denton, and our retail manager, she's blown my mind with how much she knows about retail. But one of the things she always talks about is we'll have like local makers who will do crafts and things like that and put it in the shop, and they're selling stuff on their own. Which is great, and that's wonderful, and they're interacting with the end customer. But what she's always giving advice on with those guys is, okay, yes, that end users, they're your customer, but I'm your real customer, because you're going to sell one to them, but you're going to sell 100 to me, right? And so that's kind of the way I almost want to shift people thinking. Don't stop caring about the audience.
Sure.
But the real customer that's got to bring you back again is that venue. And so then the venue puts you in front of the audience. Now you can do your thing. But off stage, we need to focus on selling to that venue, not just selling to the audience. And I think a lot of the time people see the venue as an obstacle to overcome to get to the audience, rather than this is the customer that's buying me, or buying my time, or buying my talent, or buying my service. And then together we are providing an experience for that end user. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate you saying it. It's things that have crossed my mind from time to time, but it's nice to hear from somebody who has some experience, on the opposite side of the coin, like we talked about before. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to hang out and chit chat and share a little bit of your expertise with the Techmuze community. Where can people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you?
Well, you can check out my website, jakelaughlin.com. That's Jake, Laughlin, jakelaughlin.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all that good stuff. It's just at Jake the Radio Guy. So just JAKE the Radio Guy. Get the Gig is also available on Amazon right now. So if anybody wanted to go get a copy of that, they could as well. That's me.
That's great, man. Any chance of an Audible version? I prefer to listen to books.
Definitely working on it. I'm a big audiobook guy myself, and so I really want to get an Audible version out there. Almost didn't publish it because I wanted to get the Audible version out at the same time, and I was like, you know what, let's go ahead and get it out, and then I'll get the Audible version out there. But it's coming.
Well, you'll have a customer for sure as soon as that's available. I'm looking forward to checking it out. I may even buy the physical copy, but I don't sit and turn pages too much anymore. I like to multitask. You know how it is.
I'm right there with you.
Well, listen, thanks a lot for taking the time. I understand, by the way, that you're getting married soon, so congratulations on that. You got a new book and a spouse coming up. That's great. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
And I hope that we can keep in touch. And maybe when you get your second book out that you're working on, maybe we can get together again and talk a little bit about, what the evolution of this Get the Gig concept and subject of conversation.
Would love it. Would absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Thanks to all your listeners. And, man, keep doing what you're doing, because what you do is so important. And you do such a great job with it. I've loved getting to go back and watch a lot of these too, and really have become a big fan of yours. This is really cool what you're doing here at Techmuze.
Well, thank you. I will carry on because I just can't help myself.
I love it. I love it.
All
Thanks
right,
so
my
much
friend.
for having me.
Thanks again. We'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it.
Some wise words from my new friend, Jake Laughlin. If you enjoyed this content, as always, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so that you get notified whenever we have something new to offer you. I look forward to meeting with you again on the next episode of Techmuze. Take care, keep making music, and go get that gig.